Alright, Game Bears, it is time for a new edition of Unused Content in Games, and today we're continuing with Mega Man X3's Unused Content, because last time we went over the Game Start option over here, and the 8 Mavericks. Next up, why don't we look at the Vile, Bit Bite, and Dr. Doppler, or Dr. Dottler stages. So, let us begin. And Sigma spoilers. But you guys have probably already played this game. I don't mean to assume, but I apologize for those who didn't already play it, but otherwise. Alright, Vile or Vava as his Japanese name. Level graphics. Alright, the dark gray factory backdrop got a much appreciated splash of blue in the final version. Here's what that looks like. And here is the final version. It does look a little more colorful because of that. I'm kind of glad they went for that. Alright, next up, the layout. All of the ceiling pieces in the August prototype are cracked in this exact same way. This was fixed in the final version to add some visual variety. Alright, here's what that looks like. And here's what this final version looks like right over here. And while we're at it, before we continue going on, if you enjoy this content at any point in time, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's for free and you can always change your mind later. Anyways, let us continue. The same changes can be seen here. The color of the hexagonal fencing is brighter in the final game, and here's what that looks like. Alright, more different cracks. The blue foreground walls extend all the way to the left of the final version, and right here's what that looks like. And here's the final version. Make sure to thoroughly examine those cracks. Yeah, I'm not going to be doing that, thank you. But here's what this looks like over here. Alright, Vile doesn't have an entrance animation in the prototype. He just kind of pops in. Alright, too bad I don't think we'll be able to see that animation here, but here's what this little screenshot looks like of him jumping up and using his firecracker attack. Fun fact about Mega Man X3 is the only one of the 8 X series games to not have a fire-themed Maverick, but that's kind of made up for with some of the bosses like Vile over here or Vile Mark II, having a fire-themed attack. In the August prototype, Vile will pause in the air for a bit while dropping his napalm bombs. In the final game version, he drops them without stopping. Huh, I didn't know he was using napalm bomb for Mega Man 5. Who would have known? The napalm flames absorb all of X's weapons in the August version, including the charged frost shield. In the final version, it's the other way around. Alright, Vile gives his death speech even if he isn't defeated by one of his weaknesses. Even though the Ray Splasher is one of Vile's weaknesses, he'll only start exploding after being defeated by the spinning blades. In the final version, both will cause him to be permanently defeated. Alright, Vile is treated as a stage boss, meaning that the stage ends when he's defeated by the spinning blades. The game then jumps to the weapon get screen, where he tries to generate a wireframe model, and weapon named with amazing results. The player has 60 seconds to escape in the August build, but only 50 seconds in the final version. Alright, here's what this looks like. Alright, and here's this one with a bit of glitching text back here. You get whatever that is. That weapon probably isn't very good anyways. Alright, the Vile teleporter at the end of the stage can be destroyed by a charged frost shield in the August samples. Luckily, this just destroys the case, not the actual object that teleports X out of the stage. So the player isn't screwed now yet, at least. Anyways, here's what that looks like. The Nightmare Police. Bit's homing fireballs is faster in the August prototype. Bite's magnetic mine is nowhere near as effective as in the final game. Alright, Doppler Stage 1. Here's the layout. The blue walls, the tiles extend further to the left in the final version. Here's what that looks like. And here's the final game. The reason for this change. Once you get to the topmost platform of this section, the game shifts the background layer in proportion of the upcoming Rex 2000 sub-boss fight. In the early layout, the player can actually see the background shift on the left side of the screen. Then extended blue walls cover up that transition in the final version. Alright, here's a look at that. And here's what it looks like in the final. The ceiling spikes have a transparent background in the August prototype, which looks a bit weird when the ceiling starts falling and cutting off other tiles with blank spaces. In the final version, there is an additional layer of spikes, and the spikes are all on a dark blue background. Here's what that looks like. The final game adds 3 more of those circular floor baubles at the bottom, while also changing the topmost wall decorations in the middle of the screen. Here's what that looks like. Alright, the edge of the horizontal crushing walls become invisible if they are near the vertical edge of the screen. This occurs only while they are in motion and was fixed in the final version. During the Rex 2000 fight, if Zero has not died and X ends the fight on the right side of the screen behind Rex 2000, X will moonwalk to the left and then walk to where Zero is. This was fixed in the final version. Here's what that looks like. After the Rex 2000 fight, the door palette will be glitched if Zero was present. This is because palette F used by the door sprite is overridden by Zero's weapon palette. That palette isn't really used at any point in the fight, so the final version just never loads it in. This same glitch is present in Doppler Stage 2, and here's what that looks like. Our God Car Machine Orinari's top half uses an incorrect palette in the August 9th build. Here's what that looks like. Looks kind of glitchy, very messed up. That bottom part over here looks a little glitched out as well. Alright, once the player damages God Car Machine Orinari, he switches to the standard enemy damage tables. This means that it takes much more damage from weapons that is affected by the gravity well, which with the uncharged version freezing the screen. Or freezing the game, and the charged version lifting the top half of his body off screen, and the parasitic bomb, which instantly ends the fight. Here's what that looks like. Looks very glitchy and not properly fixed. Alright, in the August 9th prototype, when God Car Machine Orinari has been defeated, the body will start moving upward at light speed. That sounds terrible, but here's what it looks like. Alright, in both versions, if the boss, is flying when it's defeated, the jet stripes will stick around after the boss blows up. The player will always enter God Car Machine Orinari's room in the August version, regardless of whether or not they previously killed Bit or Bite. Additionally, God Car Machine Orinari will not appear if one of the Bit and Bite duos is killed. Use the P2 warp command, the August 9th prototype, or activate per action replay, this code over here, in the August 23rd before entering the stage to access the Press Disposer boss fight. The Press Disposer boss behavior seems finished, but is lacking the sound effects and has no invincibility frames. There are a few bugs in the August 9th prototype, most notably to the Tornado Fang. Here's what that looks like. Now let's look at this previous screen over here. Alright, the trunk sprite isn't properly aligned with the boss's body. Hitting it with the Tornado Fang briefly freezes it in place before it snaps back into its original incorrect position. Destroying the boss's trunk with the Tornado Fang triggers the boss's destruction sequence, though the Press Disposer and all related sprites are not destroyed. The player loses control of X until they take damage, and here's what that looks like. If the Press Disposer is defeated with the Tornado Fang, some glitch behavior can arise depending on where it is on screen. If it is at the top of the screen, the boss will be defeated normally. If it is floating up or falling down, the boss will start flashing as if it's been destroyed. But the boss destruction sequence will never play. The player has control of X, but since the grinder at the top right disappears, the game is soft locked. If it's on the ground, the game will freeze, and here's what that looks like. Destroying the trunk at the boss and the boss with the tornado thing while they're both at the top of the screen will play the boss destruction sequence twice, causing the blue to white fading animation to prematurely terminate. Here's what that looks like. Alright, next up, level graphics. The background of this stage changes from an endless array of pipes and tanks carrying water to a stormy, cloudy, mountainous backdrop. I think I prefer the latter. Kind of looks like a little water system you can kind of swim through. Alright, since the August prototypes are set against an industrial background, the level is allowed a lot more opening into the foreground. The final version adds a lot more wall tiles and windows. Oh, how they added more windows. And here's what this looks like. I'll read that last paragraph again and apply it to this composition. Comparison. Look at all those windows they added, man. The blue and purple walls extend down a bit more in the August version. The brown walls are darker in the final version. Here's what that looks like. Two giant windows occupy most of the foreground, where here in the final version, the earlier layout has nothing. They could at least have added some of those blue walls, but no, they didn't. Alright, more of the same here. Windows or space, it's your decision. And here's what this looks like. And the final version. This is a very boring climb in the August version. At least the final game adds a few windows to give the player some sort of reference of how high they are. Alright, here's what that looks like. God damn, what's with all the spikes? Alright, here's the final version with those windows in the background. A total of 7. Just gotta count the windows and you know how high you are. Probably screwing with those little snail enemies. Whatever that means, but here's what it looks like. The August build uses brown versions of those blue wall plates, to break up the monotony and give the room vertical symmetry. The final version no longer has those tiles, so it's lacking a bit in comparison. Full Caragile, whatever that says, is placed higher up in the final version, making it a bit more difficult to hit, as you can see here. Alright. On to miscellaneous. The water layer in this level is initially glitched, with the water line represented by alternating blue squares. The pausing and unpausing will fix this. The sequence for obtaining Zero Saber is broken in both August prototypes. Here's what that looks like. The game forgets to swap characters. So Zero teleports in to talk to a badly injured Zero. The new Zero will inherit the old Zero's charged level. Luckily, the right flags are still set, so X does get the saber. The player never regains control of their character. They have to use the free moment debug function to move again. Here's what that looks like. Alright, when Mosquitos is defeated, the camera will usually lock in place. The only way to fix this is if the camera is either already locked to the left when the boss is destroyed, or if X is about to go far enough to the left, to the point where the camera would normally lock on the left side. After he teleports in, this should unlock the right camera bound. A related glitch can sometimes make the dialog box during the scene to be invisible. It's not clear what causes this. Alright, if Mosquitos collides into a wall when it's trying to crash into Zero, it'll start its boss destruction sequence, and Zero will not kneel down. Here's what that looks like. Alright, if Zero is pressed against the shutters on the right after Mosquitoes crushes into him, or wall, he'll walk through the doors and either Zero or X, depending on the version, will end up in the wall on the other side. Here's what that looks like. Zero will take a knee after a Mosquitoes has disappeared after exploding. In the final game, he takes a knee, or just kneels down, you could say that, immediately after Mosquitoes crashes into him. X won't always face Zero during this cutscene. In the final game, Zero's sprite will be reoriented to X's face, to face X. The music of the stage will stop after this scene and won't start again unless the player dies. In the August 9th prototype, the Escanale enemy has strange hitbox behavior which causes X's charge shot to be deflected by Escanale's platform before they leave X's buster, rendering the climb section unnecessarily hard. Volcaragil is similarly broken. Alright, here's what this looks like. I guess this is simply just some glitches that weren't fixed during this build of the game. Also, notice how X's armor is a bit more blue here. It's when it's supposed to be white. Maybe the third armor was originally going to be blue. I prefer the white look, though. The layer on Volcaragil is very buggy in this build. Basically, if any part of its body overlaps with any part of the HUD, that part will either be deleted or flicker in and out of existence. This sprite seems to display fine, though. Here's what it looks like. Or when X is above the water, whatever, bodies will start bleeding in front of the top of the screen. And here's what that looks like. Possibly a result of fixing the display glitches in the August 9th prototype, whatever that word is, body will now scroll upward with the camera if X goes up far enough. The final version fixes this by locking the camera just below the point where the glitch occurs. In both prototypes, Volcaragil has no invincibility frames, and that's what it looks like. Doppler Stage 2. This level is not normally accessed in the August prototype, even if you don't defeat Vile with one of his weaknesses. Or use one of the 2P debug commands in the August 9th build, or use the action command with this code here. On the August 23rd build of the stage, select to access the rect version of Doppler Stage 2. Yeah, I said Doppler, not Doppler. And note that the boss shutters is Mosquitoes' boss room won't open, because the object that opens the door isn't present in this version of the level. Use Pro Action Replay with this code here to warp to the checkpoint after the Mosquitoes fight. And here's some level graphics. In the August version of the stage has a slightly different background from the rect version of Doppler Stage 2, with cracks present in most of the water tanks. The final version can get away with reusing the same background for both versions of the stage, and here's what that looks like. At this point, it becomes obvious why the foreground and background changes in the final version. The broken windows let the player know immediately that something is wrong in the stage. The August prototype's floors and walls are in much worse shape, with cracks and tears everywhere. The final version splits the damage between the new foreground and elements and the floors and walls. There is an extra Hamma, that is such a stupid name, to the right of the Notor Banger, and an additional wall cancer above the Hamma to the middle platform. There are actually more enemies here than in the intact version of the stage, despite that doesn't make a lot of sense. So they took some of them out. Alright, here's what this looks like. There's a lot of enemies, god damn. Alright, some basic changes here. Looks like Vile missed one of the windows. Yeah, looks like he did. Alright, here's a closer look at this without the windows. And here's one with the windows. I guess for some reason he just really didn't want to break that window. Yeah, well. While the usual changes are present in the upper part of the section, in the drained underwater portion of the stage, stages are damaged in unidentical ways. Guess they got lazy, maybe a little. Here's what it looks like. Alright, standard broken glass. Opa. Here's what it looks like. Alright, the wall cancer above the last Hammer in this area was deleted for the final version. There was also a lone Earth commander in the middle for some reason. Alright, here's what that looks like. And I guess this thing right here is the Earth commander? That's a weird name. It's not connected to the Earth in any way. What makes it command the Earth? Bad joke. Oh well. Alright, in the August version, the flying enemies in this area differ depending on which version of Dottler Stage 2 the player is in. If it's normal, the enemies are Helits. If it's wrecked, the enemies are Earth Commanders. The final game uses Helits in both versions of the stage. Here's what that looks like. Those are some cracks. And here's what they look like. More cracks, less wall plates. Here's what it looks like. Alright, one window intact, one window cracked. The duality of man. Also, geez, Vile really went to town on those platforms. A little too much. Alright, here's what it looks like. I mean, Vile likes destruction after all. Like, a little too much. Alright, in the August 9th prototype, pausing and unpausing the game will corrupt the stage's graphics due to an oversight. The game has to load the pause menu graphics to RAM, and once the player unpauses, the game must reload to their appreciated graphics by using up the current stage ID. The problem is that the Vile version of Dottler Stage 2 uses a different ID, OE, than the normal version, OB, or 0B. And there is no entry for an ID yet, so the pause menu graphics are never unloaded. Mosquitos is still around in the August sample. In the final version, Vile presumably destroys it before X gets to it. And here's what it looks like. It's all glitchy too, or at least a little glitchy. Alright, in the August 9th build, going through the boss shutter loads Blast Hornet's tiles instead of Vile's ride armor. To load the correct tiles, use the Pro Action Replay this code right over here to extend the right camera boundaries. Then activate free movement mode. Position the camera vertically such that the boss shutters are halfway off the screen, then go right. Here's what that looks like. Blast Hornet in a ride armor. I wonder what that would look like. Kind of like this. Vile can only hit X with his claw attack if he's also charging at X. If he tries to swipe at X when he's against the wall, he takes no damage. Contact damage and Vile's charge attack only do 1 HP of damage in the August build. In the final version, contact damage takes away 6 HP and then the charge attack takes away 8 HP. God damn, way too much damage. But here's what it looks like. Vile's Goliath ride armor has an extra attack in the August 9th prototype. Vile charges at X in a crouching stance. If the player presses the fire button, he'll do a short jump. And for some reason, he's green in this shot. But here's what it looks like. X's wires, or Vile's wires, don't work right in either of the August prototypes. In the 9th build, they don't spawn at all. It's not clear if they've been coded yet, but they're definitely part of Vile's style set. In the 23rd build, the wires ignore tile collisions, so they end up getting stuck in place where Vile is unable to destroy them. They'll end up piling up just out of reach, where they take up most of the remaining sprite spaces that make Vile's ride armor disappear. If there are 5 on screen and Vile tries to shoot out more, he'll be stuck in a shooting animation for the rest of the fight, or until the player scrolls the wires off screen. But here's what it looks like. Alright, after destroying Vile's ride armor in the August 23rd build, when his right shoulder reappears, it will load the incorrect graphics. Loads graphics from his projectiles at the top of his right foot. Needless to say, this was fixed in the final version. If X absorbs Vile's wires by using charged gravity well, X will start to pose forever until his weapon is charged to another one through the pause menu. Giving Vile's ride armor cannot reach X if X's pose locks at a certain height. In the August build, Vile's ride armor can be destroyed in one hit if X lets him or left him out of the screen, while a Z Saber shockwave hits Vile's ride armor. The game will freeze if X left Vile out of screen, while a Z Saber shockwave hits Vile. Vile's napalm flames can be immobilized by Zero Shockwave, or Z Saber Shockwave. The Shockwave, which should immobilize Vile, can make him invincible instead, due to an attribute of impact effects not dealing damage to bosses in the August build. While the Shockwave still deals damage, the immobilize attribute somehow conflicts with the boss beaten event triggers. Excuse me, I can't read. And Vile no longer retains his hitbox if all his life bar is removed, like most bosses. Here's what that looks like. I guess he's got a second arm cannon over here. I'm not entirely sure what that is. Alright, Dottler Stage 3. Normally the August 23rd build ends after completing either version of Dottler Stage 2, displaying a coming soon screen, then resetting using the Pro Action Replay, this code over here, on the stage select screen to access the stage. Excuse me, needed to sneeze. The earlier background is a little boring with no animation. Plus, it's just a shame that it's just the same 128 by 128 graphics repeated over and over. The final version has a proper 256 by 512 animated background, and here's what that looks like. Yeah, they're not wrong, this does look kind of boring. This one's a little more fun. Almost looks like one of those Earthbound backgrounds. Alright, the August prototype uses two backgrounds. The first is used only in the teleporter hub, while this background is used in the rest of the stage. The final version uses the new, larger background everywhere in the stage. Here's what that looks like. The background, well, foreground, but whatever. The scene in Dr. Dottler's room is animated in the final version. The green color in the backgrounds are brighter in the final version. Here's what that looks like. It's a giant eyeball. He's looking right into my soul. And here's the other giant eyeball. And it's a little animated this time. If you look closely, this whole thing over here kind of looks like a face. But anyways, the foreground wall tiles are improperly tiled in the August build. The palettes used throughout the stage are brighter in the final version, with the exception of the orange light, which are a bit duller. Here's what this looks like. Bizarrely, the teleporter hub has 12 teleporters in both of the August prototypes. The extra ones don't lead anywhere special, though. Just the default boss room without an actual boss. The final version gets rid of the extra teleporters. Place a powered-up dispenser in the top middle of the room and move the lower two platforms down. Here's what that looks like. Just like in the original fight, the August version has a vertical boss shutter in the top right of Blast Hornet's boss room. The foreground tiles were updated to match the new background design, though the cylindrical wall tiles seen in the background are used in both versions. Here's what that looks like. And here's this one with the more fun background. The only differences in Blizzard Buffalo's area are the aforementioned palette changes. Here's what that looks like. Our Volt Catfish's arena, the volt generator in the ceiling, is the same in all versions. Here's what that looks like. Alright, here's this one. This is the generic boss room used by Gravity Beetle, Toxic Seahorse, Crush Crawfish, and Neon Tiger. It's also used by Tonal Rider in the August prototype. Here's what this looks like. Alright, but he has his own boss room in the final version. This room seems to have been added to fix a glitch. See the next section for more information. Here's what this looks like. Alright, miscellaneous. There was a glitch with the generic boss room in the August 23rd prototype that causes X to get stuck in the ceiling. And the exact reason for this is unknown, but evidence suggests that having the Tunnel Rhino fight take place in the same room as 4 other Maverick fights be the cause. It might be the cause. The final version fixes this by giving Tunnel Rhino his own boss room, one that's stored above all of the other boss rooms in the level layout. In the August prototypes, the player can produce or proceed to the next part of the stage regardless of how many bosses are left. Here's what that looks like. And I guess X took some damage up here. Wonder what's going on there. Alright, the charged frost shield can absorb Dr. Dottler's fire effects in the August prototype. Here's what that looks like. Dr. Dottler is another one of those bosses that does use a fire-themed weapon as well. If Dr. Dottler is defeated while in the air, he'll fall down and use his standing sprite instead of his defeated sprite. Here's what that looks like. And with his lab coat on. Alright, Dr. Dottler's health bar is still visible after he's defeated in the August prototype. Here's what this looks like. Alright, and last up, Dottler Stage 4. Here's some level graphics. The Sigma body in the background is the same as the one you'll fight in the final version, but in the August prototype is unmistakably Neo Sigma from X2. The body is in all open capsules in the earlier background, but in some kind of animated water tank in the final game. The background is 64 pixels taller, but since the bottom part of the background is always off camera, it's not really needed. Here's what that looks like. Yeah, they just reused the sprite from X2. Nothing wrong with that, they're just trying to measure some things out, but then they definitely changed it a lot more here. Alright, same basic changes here. The final version has twice as many capsules in the background. Here's what that looks like. Alright, the empty space to the right of the longest ladder had to be filled in the final version due to the previously mentioned background shortening. Here's what that looks like. Alright, Sigma's fireballs are spawned 16 pixels further to the left/right and 2 pixels lower. Alright, Sigma's ground crawling fireballs are 4 pixels off the ground in the August samples. Sigma has an additional talking animation in the August 9th build, which he switches his shield constantly between both of his hands. In the August 9th build, Sigma's attack patterns is a bit different from the final build. He will always throw his shield at every start point of his pattern. While in the final build, he only starts to throw his shield at the point he has lower than half HP. The shield also begins to change its track at lower than half HP instead of the final's 4th HP. Or 1/4, whatever. There is a presumably glitch, whatever, in the August 9th build, which makes X able to permanently destroy Sigma's shield. With Charged Frost Shield, if the shield is destroyed after Sigma throws it, Sigma will shoot flames shots continuously, without changing attack patterns. If the shield is destroyed while he's holding it, he'll go through all his normal attack patterns and even attempt to throw the non-existent shield at you. Here's what this looks like. And just like Dr. Dottler in Vinyl Mark II, he is also the only other boss in the game that uses fire-based attacks. Kaiser Sigma's one of the worst final bosses in the Mega Man game, period. But yeah, Kaiser Sigma's left arm is missing at the start of the fight. It reappears when he starts flying, though. Kaiser Sigma shoots out his homing mines twice as often in the August prototypes. The hitbox on Kaiser Sigma's head is spotty in the August 23rd prototype, with shots that should be hitting instead of passing through it. Thankfully, fixed in the final version. In the August 9th build, He can't be damaged without Z sabers because his armor parts are weak points are all misaligned. This weak point happens to be surrounded by his limbs, which are all solid and can reflect normal shots, just like in the final build. Here's what this looks like, and part of the reason why I'm not a biggest fan of this boss fight, just because the hitbox is so weird. You gotta actually hit him like behind his head over here, then actually hit his head, which is just bad game design. That's misleading for the player, but whatever. X will teleport out of the stage before the ending cutscene gets a chance to start. To bypass this, activate Pro Action Replay with this code here. After X starts automatically running and deactivating it once he reaches the wall at the end. The ending cutscene is similar to the Final Emergence cutscenes, although there aren't any sound effects yet. After the cutscene ends, the player is sent back to the start of Dollar Stage 4. After teleporting out before the ending cutscene in the August 9th prototype, the game will softlock it. Here's what that little screen looks like with X teleporting in. Alright, and with that being said, that'll be it for part 2. In the next part, we're going to go over some unused boss things. And as usual, the question of the day should be, of all the unused content we went over today, what thing would you like to see the most in the final game? I guess that little eyeball we just saw in the background. This being animated, well, actually, nah. Not a lot of things here I think I would have liked to see in the final version, but I guess maybe this boss could have been a little different, or maybe the background could have been a little different. I don't know. Maybe that's what I would have liked to see in the final version. And in part 3, we shall look at sprite changes, because, man, there's a lot of pretty cool sprite changes that we see here. Like some of these over here with these backgrounds. So that'll be it. So if y'all enjoyed this and you want to see more, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. And once again, answer the question of the day. What would you like to see in the final version and why? Let us know. And in part 3, we will look at sprite changes. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Have a perfect day.